It was a bright, golden morning in the village of Midderidge, nestled between rolling hills and verdant fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. Dawn arrived gently here, not with harsh brilliance but with a slow unfurling of light, as though the sun itself wished to respect the quiet rhythm of the land. The first rays slipped over the hilltops and spilled into the valley, brushing against the dulled hen grass until each blade shimmered with dew. The fields glowed softly, painted in hues of emerald and gold, while faint mist hovered close to the earth like a lingering dream reluctant to fade. Birds stirred with the light. Sparrows flitted from branch to branch, robins perched proudly atop low stone walls, and larks spiraled upward into the widening sky, their songs tumbling freely through the air. Each note wove into the next, forming a living tapestry of sound that wrapped the village in warmth. The air itself seemed to hum, alive with promise, carrying the scent of damp soil, wildflowers, and freshly cut hay. It was a day made for listening, a day that seemed to invite secrets, stories, and truths whispered not in words, but in breath, rustle, and echo. Nature leaned closer on mornings like this, as though she wished to be heard by anyone willing to still their heart long enough to listen. In the heart of Midderidge lived a young girl named Ellara. Ellara had always been different from the other children of the village. Where laughter and shouting followed them like shadows, she moved quietly, her presence soft and thoughtful. While the others raced through the meadows, their feet pounding the grass as they chased games and dares, Ellara often lingered at the edges, watching, listening, absorbing. She did not dislike the other children, far from it. But there was something deeper that called to her, something more enduring than fleeting play. Her favorite place in all the world lay just beyond the village boundary, where the last cottages gave way to open land and the forest began its slow advance. There stood an old oak tree, ancient beyond memory, its trunk thick and deeply furrowed, its branches sprawling wide as though embracing the sky. The villagers said the oak had been there before Midderidge was even named, before paths were worn into the earth by human feet. It was under this tree that Ellara felt most herself. Her mother often found her there, seated with her back against the bark, eyes closed, a peaceful smile curving her lips. Ellara would sit so still that birds sometimes dared to land nearby, and squirrels paused mid-scurry to observe her with bright, curious eyes. She listened, not with strain or effort, but with ease and reverence. The wind combed through the leaves overhead, the brook murmured somewhere in the distance, and the forest spoke in countless subtle voices. To Ellara, these sounds were as meaningful as words. Today was no different. As the village began to stir, doors creaked open and smoke curled from chimneys. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer rang faintly from the far end of the square, and somewhere a baby cried before being soothed. Ellara moved through it all with quiet purpose, a small woven basket cradled in her arms. Inside lay fresh bread still warm from the oven and a handful of berries she had gathered the evening before. She made her way toward the oak tree, her steps light upon the worn path. When she reached it, she paused, as she always did, placing her palm against the bark in a familiar greeting. The tree felt cool and steady beneath her touch, its presence reassuring. She settled beneath its branches, which arched protectively overhead, filtering the sunlight into shifting patterns that danced across the ground. Ellara's chest tightened with emotion. Understanding bloomed within her. Her gift was not meant to remain hidden. It was not for her alone. With reverence, she rose and turned back toward the village. The journey home felt different, shorter, guided, as though the forest itself approved of her purpose. When she emerged from the trees, Midderidge welcomed her with familiar sounds and sights. In the days that followed, Ellara began to share what she had learned. She gathered the village children and led them into the forest, teaching them to slow down, to listen. She showed them bird calls, the meaning of rustling leaves, the peace found in running water. Word spread. Adults joined. The village changed. Over time, Midderidge grew more harmonious, more compassionate. People listened, to nature and to one another. Years passed, and Ellara grew older, becoming a respected elder known for her wisdom. Still, she often returned to the old oak tree, listening to the ever-changing symphony of life. And through her, the gift of listening transformed not just a single life, but an entire community, forging a bond between humanity and nature that would endure for centuries to come. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel. Ellara inhaled deeply, letting the morning wash over her. The world seemed to expand inside her chest, filling her with a calm that bordered on joy. Her keen sense of hearing was more than a simple preference, it was a gift. She could hear things others could not. Where most people noticed only the loudest sounds, Ellara perceived layers upon layers beneath them. She heard the whisper of leaves brushing against one another, the faint scuttle of insects beneath the soil, the soft, rhythmic breathing of the forest itself. Animals spoke in tones and cadences she understood instinctively, not as words, but as intention and feeling. This gift had been passed down through generations of her family, though it was rarely discussed. In Midridge, difference was treated with polite distance, and such abilities were often dismissed as imagination or superstition. Only Ellara's grandmother had ever spoken openly of it. Her grandmother, Althea, had been a woman of quiet strength and deep knowing. In her later years, she would sit by the hearth and tell Ellara stories that felt less like tales and more like memories of the world itself. She had explained that those who truly listened, who opened themselves to the voices beyond human speech, could understand the language of the earth. The world is always speaking, Althea had said, her voice low and steady. Most people are simply too busy to hear it. Ellara carried those words with her always. As she sat beneath the oak, she closed her eyes and let her thoughts drift. Gradually, the sharper sounds of the village faded away, replaced by the melodies she cherished. She followed the rustle of a family of rabbits moving through the underbrush, sensed the bubbling chatter of the brook as it danced over smooth stones, and caught the distant, mournful call of a lone owl returning to its roost after a night of hunting. Each sound painted a picture, vivid and alive. In its center stood a stone fountain, ancient beyond telling. Ivy clung to its weathered surface, winding around cracked stone as though reclaiming it for the forest. Water flowed steadily from the mouth of a carved lion's head, spilling into a crystal-clear pool below. Sunlight filtered down in scattered beams, striking the water and sending prisms of light dancing across the clearing. Stone benches ringed the fountain, worn smooth by centuries of use. Wildflowers grew freely among them. Violets, foxglove, and blossoms Ellara could not name, adding splashes of color to the muted green. She approached slowly, her breath shallow with wonder. The musical chime was coming from the water itself. Each droplet sang as it fell, producing a pure, bell-like note that resonated in the air. Together, they formed a melody so beautiful it brought tears to her eyes. Ellara knelt beside the fountain, entranced. That was when she noticed something even more astonishing. The water's surface shimmered, not merely reflecting the sky above, but revealing images, clear and vivid. She saw vast deserts, dunes rippling beneath relentless wind. She saw towering mountains, their peaks crowned with cloud and snow. She saw bustling cities filled with people from every corner of the world, their lives overlapping in endless motion. Each vision carried its own soundscape, blending seamlessly with the fountain's song. Laughter, footsteps, wind, and silence merged into a grand harmony. Ellara realized she was witnessing the stories of the earth itself, unfolding like an immense, living tapestry. The images shifted again. Now she saw a lush green valley much like her own. A young woman sat beneath a tree, listening intently, her posture and expression achingly familiar. The vision changed, showing the same woman older now, surrounded by children. She spoke not with words alone, but with presence, teaching them to listen, to understand the language of the earth. Then, something new reached her ears. At first, it was barely more than a suggestion, a soft, musical chime, delicate as glass touched by wind. It threaded itself through the familiar sounds, distinct yet gentle. Ellara's eyes flew open. She listened harder, her heart quickening. The sound was faint but unmistakable, and it seemed to come from deep within the forest. She had never heard anything like it before. Curiosity stirred within her, mingled with a strange sense of recognition, as though the sound had been waiting for her. Driven by an inexplicable urge, Ellara rose to her feet. She hesitated only a moment before stepping beyond the familiar boundaries she usually respected. Her movements were cautious, her steps light upon the forest floor as she followed the sound's subtle pull. With every step deeper into the woods, the world shifted. The trees grew closer together, their trunks taller and darker, their branches knitting into a living canopy overhead. The air cooled, carrying the scent of moss and damp earth. The chime grew clearer, richer, weaving itself through the forest like a guiding thread. It was enchanting, almost otherworldly, and it drew her onward like a moth to flame. She passed landmarks she knew well. The hollow log where foxes sometimes made their den, the cluster of birch trees that stood like pale sentinels along the path. Yet soon even these familiar sights fell away, replaced by terrain she had never explored. The trees here were ancient, their trunks thick and scarred by time, their branches heavy with trailing moss that swayed gently as though breathing. Light filtered through the canopy in muted shades of green, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Ellara paused, her heart pounding, not with fear alone, but with awe. She was far from home now, deeper than she had ever ventured. Yet the sound beckoned her forward, irresistible. At last, the trees parted, and Ellara stepped into a small clearing.